everyone, it's Mithrilda. I've got a special feature for you today. Basically, I met this wonderful art teacher, Allison, on Reddit. I saw her posting in r/learn to draw about offering free art lessons, and my interest was piqued. So I contacted her about the lessons, asking what they would be about, what I needed, who she was, and how everything would be happening. Basically, she's just getting into the online art lesson field, and she wanted to sort of try out her skills and really refine her techniques in teaching on a few free clients. And I was very interested because I've never had an art teacher before like this, like a one-on-one sort of thing. I've taken classes, but I feel like that's not really the same as meeting with a sort of coach every week. She told me that her lessons would be based on observation and drawing from life. And lessons themselves would be sort of going over any questions or concerns, and also talking through concepts that were hard and exercises to improve those concepts. All the lessons are done in traditional, and she requires a set of drawing pencils with different graphite softnesses, a kneaded eraser, and a good sketchbook. After we got the lessons booked, she told me I should also buy or print off a value finder, which I did and cut out. It's very cute. And she gave me some homework to do and send to her before our lesson so she could prepare. She asked for one drawing of a face from a picture, one drawing of a chair from life, so I drew my office chair over there, which is now covered in clothes. I had to dump everything off of it onto the bed to draw it and then pile it back up. As you see, I don't sit on the chair, so it's just become a storage rack. And then a picture of an animal from reference. I sent them to her, and then we had our lesson. I thought the lesson was pretty good, and I thought that if I think it's good, other people might think it's good too, especially people around my similar skill level. So in case anyone was interested in booking her for lessons, I asked her what her rates would be. So they're $25 per lesson, or $20 per lesson if you buy them in a pack of 4. And also she said that if you mention that you came from me or my video, you could get 10% off if you book before the end of February. No affiliation, not getting paid at all. I just want to help out a fellow artist for offering such a generous resource to the art community, and for allowing me to share these lessons with you guys in case you guys can't have lessons, you know? So basically, I took the call that we had and edited out all the weird speaking nuances to have a pleasurable listening experience. I messed up recording the audio, so whenever my voice comes on, it might sound a little weird. I'm really sorry about that. If you guys have any questions for her, I would love to ask them for future episodes of lessons. And I will be playing me drawing the stuff I was supposed to draw before our first lesson over the call when there's nothing happening on the screen. Hope you guys enjoy. Also, I've reached affiliate on Twitch, which is very exciting, except that means I will no longer be able to stream to YouTube. So if you want to catch those weekly Friday streams, be sure to follow me on Twitch. I'll leave a link in the description. Hope to see y'all there.
Ask you if there were any specific goals you had for your drawing or these lessons.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something about being able to... I expressed frustration at not being able to draw heads in different angles and stuff, and faces, and you said you could help me work on that, and that would be awesome.
Yeah, so my drawing method is, I've watched a couple of your streams and your video on hands, and then you did one self-portrait video. I watched that one too. You did that one digitally, I'm pretty sure. It was it was like a couple weeks ago when I watched them right after you messaged me. So I'm having trouble remembering everything, but so it looks like you're kind of learning. I don't know exactly how to describe it. I almost would think of it like through tutorials.
Yeah.
So like it seems like you'll attack like figure drawing and spend a while, watching videos on how to draw figure drawing, and then maybe you'll, attack hands and watch some videos on how to draw hands. My method is quite a bit different than that. I kind of believe that once you learn to observe, you can draw anything you want to draw. Once you've got that observation down, and you learn to trust your eye, as long as you have either something in front of you in real life or a photo reference, I believe anybody can draw anything with that method. So as far as drawing faces at different angles go, that definitely should be something that you're able to do with my methods, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because theoretically you should be able to draw anything The route you're going down is a really good route for like imagination drawing instead of drawing from reference or life. It's a great way to learn to draw. I just think learning observation, it's a skill in and of itself that's useful for drawing. And it's also really useful when you do draw from imagination because, you know, you can pull in things from references. And once you've got that, you know, trained eye, you should be able to, you know, I'll give you an example. So I saw somebody on one of the art subreddits asking for help on how to draw sweaty skin. And they were specifically asking for like a tutorial on how to draw sweaty skin. And my approach when I come to something I want to draw is find an example. So find like a couple photo examples or like a real life example and look at it long enough until I understand why it looks the way it looks. So like I recently started painting and I painted a glass cup and that was a huge challenge, but when I stared at the image for long enough and understood why glass looks the way it does, I was able to translate that onto the paper. So that's kind of my strategy, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I started
It's a little
learning how to
different from
draw
what you've
that
been
way.
doing.
My first resource was drawing on the right side of the brain.
Yeah, that's great. I actually use some of the lessons from that book. Because they're great, like especially when somebody hasn't even had observation click at all and they're still in that symbol drawing phase. There's a few lessons at the beginning of that book that will just completely like switch on that part of the brain that you need for observational drawing. So yeah, I yeah, that's a great. If you've used that book, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's really where I started, and then I guess I felt really frustrated because I could. Well, I mean, of course, I don't really have any measure of skill, but I felt like, oh, I can copy down these images, all right, but if I ever want to draw anything from imagination, I can never summon up anything. So that's why I really wanted to start
With
learning
the
how to do the
construction kind of thing,
with
yeah,
actual
with like
constructing
Drawbox.
things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to be less helpful with those construction things. I have done construction drawing in the past. It's not the way I typically draw, and it's not, I guess, something I'm well versed in enough to feel comfortable teaching. But what I can do is I can give you the tools to combine observation and imagination, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would love to learn how to observe better and really read, I guess read a scene or read an image and be able to place the proportions correctly and look at the values and the light. I know that's something I'm definitely weak in, and it's really frustrated me in the past, so therefore I've sort of neglected to actually learn and improve in it.
Yeah, we can definitely work on that. Proportion then is something you want to work on, and also like the concept of creating space and atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? Cool. Yeah, we can definitely do that. You've got your 3 reference images, but I did a lot of the planning for your lesson based on your videos. And it's interesting because a couple of the problems I saw in your videos are problems that I saw specifically in this tiger. And I think that they're going to be pretty easy to overcome. I'm pretty optimistic about some of the stuff I want to work on with you. I think we'll see good progress pretty quick. You obviously put in a lot of time to your drawing, so
Yeah.
which is great. There's nothing better for learning than, just mileage. The chair, I was really impressed with this chair. You picked a hard subject. No straight lines, a rolly chair with lots of form, you picked a really good angle for it too, that nice 3-side view where you've got the front, this side, and some of the top. So yeah, that one you did really good. And I can tell you've got a strong sense of form. And I'm assuming that comes from your construction drawing practice with Drawbox, which is great. And this is, complex form. These aren't just cubes. These are, curvy, overlapping pieces. So, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't drawn anything like that in such a long time.
Yeah, it's a change. I drew a power drill recently, and it was like the first time I've ever drawn anything like that. I guess technical.
Uh-huh.
It was an interesting challenge. So I'm hoping you found this one to be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, it was fun. It reminded me of a resource I found a long time ago, and I wish I could find it again because I miss it. But it was about life drawing, and basically the first step was drawing envelopes around things. and I definitely utilized that for this.
Oh, no way. Yeah, that's really funny that was something I was going to actually talk to you about. It's called notional space. But here's the link. So yeah, it's basically drawing that, I guess you could call it an envelope. Yeah, like a box around something. So yeah, have you done this kind of notional space thing? Is that what you're talking about?
No, what, these
Oh,
are like
okay.
rectangles around them? Like, I think basically what I'm familiar with is where you draw a big shape that like completely encloses the object, but like, has like the basic proportions of how tall and wide it is.
Like
And then
this kind of? But you'd probably break it down into smaller parts.
kind of like that, except just the lines on the outside. And then
Oh,
you get,
gotcha.
and then you get like closer and finer details like toward the contours.
Okay. Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. I've never personally done that, but it's basically like a type of construction drawing though, where you're building, like simple forms and then within those simple forms. So I don't want you at any point to really completely disregard construction drawing. I just want to add on top of your construction drawing knowledge some of that like finer detail for observation. Do you happen to have any of your drawings of hands on hand that were in your YouTube videos?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a
So,
little faint, but I can probably make it full screen. Oh, yep, that's perfect. Would you stop on number 7 in particular? One of the things I noticed, and this is something that happens really commonly with people who draw contours or outlines, is your shape width is a little bit off. Otherwise, your proportions are generally really good. I mean, your like finger length and the length for all of the individual pieces of the finger, the length of the hand, all of the lengths are great. It's the widths that I think are an issue. And I wanted to go over real quick with you how to kind of fix that through observation and maybe like a different way of thinking about when you're drawing. Do you typically concentrate on contour while you draw? Like the line in particular, instead of, I guess, thinking about shapes.
like I feel like I try to focus on the shapes and then I find myself drifting back to just copying what the contours are a lot, and I feel like that's
That's
the problem.
super common. Yeah, that's like you'll notice this finger is very very kind of thin, and thinning out long cylinders. Typically, one of two things will happen with be thinned out or thickened. And with fingers, there's a tendency, I feel, to thin them out because, a finger that's too fat looks obviously immediately wrong. A finger that's too thin doesn't have that same, gut reaction.
Yeah, I posted some of my like figure mannequins on a critique board, and they said that like I was making the limbs too thin, the cylinders for the limbs.
Yeah, I noticed it too in the wrists. In some of these, in some of them, you've done really with the thickness, and I think it's typically the shorter cylinders that tend to, like the thumb, or when you had, I think there was one that was a fist. That one, they all looked great. So it's the long cylinders, I think, that are. This is something that there's a few ways to go about approaching it, and really, ideally, it's almost like checks and balances. There's multiple ways to look at your work and figure out if it's accurate. So I'd like to go over a few of those with you during our lessons in general. So I think part of the reason that you're thinning out your fingers and your cylinders is was this one drawn from life or photo?
It was from a photo.
Photo? Okay. So I noticed that the lighting you were using was typically like front lit or flash lighting, at least in the photos that you were showing on the video. So what happens when you front light something or use like a flash for photography is that it really flattens out the forms. And there's a tendency to kind of overcompensate for that flattening because it does make cylinders look too big because they don't have that undershadow that will make them look round. There's a tendency to thin them out as a result to kind of compensate for that flat lighting. So a good way to avoid that is to angle your light, never have it coming from the front. So I like to have my light somewhere between usually 60 and 30 degrees from my subject matter and off to one side. Usually a little bit front facing, like you don't want it backlit, you don't want it completely front lit. But that angled light, what happens is you get greater contrast, which is automatically more appealing in an image. You end up with form shadows that really cue the viewer into which side the light's hitting and which side it's not, which gives them an idea of, because then they know, oh, this is one side of the object, this is the other side of the object, just by looking. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
When you have that flat lighting, things tend to look kind of fat or chubby or a little girthier. And so, you automatically compensate by drawing them a little thinner than they actually appear. And then when you go back in and add the shadows, they end up appearing much, much skinnier. So I think there's a few ways we can go about working on proportion, and I'll run a few by you. One of them is negative space drawing. If you read Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, that's one of the things they go over, is negative space drawing. I don't know if did you do those exercises at all?
Yeah, I did all the exercises.
Oh, cool. Perfect. So, that we might want to do a brush up on that if you want. That helps with shape consciousness, which is really good. Another thing that we can do is that notional drawing, which I gave you the link to this practice, where you draw a box. I'll explain it a little bit more. You use like these L-shaped pieces of paper. You can cut them out. What I did is I had some picture frame mats that I had like extras that I didn't like the color of, so I ended up cutting one of those to make the I can't remember what you call these. I guess a viewfinder, a good word for it. And this is like me kind of showing you how to use it. So what you do is you want to find the edges. It's a little hard to line it up with photo. It's much easier to line it up with eye, which is why I don't have it quite touching the edges here. But yeah, you want to use that. You can use it for photo reference, life reference. It works either way. When you're doing it with life drawing, it's a good idea to maybe have something to prop it up. And you might want to also tape it temporarily to keep it in the right shape. But the nice thing about this is that it gives you an automatic proportion tool. So like, let's take a look at this drawing of an island, this like map drawing. When they transfer it, like when you transfer this rectangle to the page to draw it, you would mark where every edge of the shape meets. And then that can help you, that gives you like an automatic baseline for where your, it's like a rough idea of where your proportions should fit. So that can be helpful. The other nice thing about this exercise is that you can practice the negative space by drawing these corner areas of whatever your object is using the negative space, basically making a silhouette with the negative space, not even looking at the shape of the island over. That can help with proportion. There's also there's a few other proportion tricks that we could work on if you don't want to do the notion exercise. One of them is using I've heard it called like a base unit or a reference unit. I'll go ahead and pop up this picture of a car real quick. So I've been using this one in other lessons, and I've been recommending that people will use this bottom line right here because it's straight and it's a good size as their base unit. And with that base unit, you basically just compare the other lengths and widths in the drawing to that base unit. And once you've got all the big shapes in, then you can for sizes. And I find it's really helpful to ask qualitative questions like, is this wheel longer than this headlight? Is this window, shorter than the tire? Anything like that. Self-reference within your image to get those proportions right. So the exercise for the base unit one would basically be to cut, well, first you would draw your base unit on the page, and then you would cut a small, like a paper that's the same size as your base unit. And then as you're drawing, ask yourself, how much bigger is this? Is 1.5 times the size? Is this half the size? And then check it with that little piece of paper to see how close your, estimates are. And that should help you kind of hone that intuition for proportion. And the other one is, what you would do is you would basically, it's like a tracing exercise. So we would take, I'm assuming you have Photoshop or some decent photo editing program since you do a lot of art on the computer. Cool. So what you would want to do is you'd want to overlay this image on the tiger and then trace the tiger and see how close those two images you're drawing and the tiger are as far as proportion goes. Not necessarily concentrating on things like angle. I'd be more concerned with shape width, if that makes sense. So like how wide the torso is and stuff like that. So if you want to work on proportion, I would say any of those lessons is probably a decent way to go about, approaching it maybe from a different angle that you haven't before. Really, it's up to you if you want to pick one of those to do.
I really want to try out the notional space exercise.
I really like the notional space exercise. It's really good for also, I don't know if you ever have a problem like filling the page or like feet running off the page or, heads getting cut off because the drawing is too big, but the notional space drawing does really help with that idea of fitting your object or your subject within the composition exactly where you want them, whether that's a full page or if they're off in the corner. You know what I mean? Just getting them compositionally settled. So yeah, the notional space one's a lot of fun. You might want to also try thinking with that base unit too a little bit while doing that one. So I'll go ahead and send you this drawing, which you can practice the notional space for. And then you might want to do, I always recommend life drawing. I think bare minimum you should be doing half life drawing, half photo drawing. The more life drawing, the better. If you get a chance, you might want to also do drawing with that real viewfinder. Shoes are a really good one for this exercise because you can get that nice 3-angle view and they have interesting shape.
What's exactly the process? Like, do I use a viewfinder and I find the exact ratio of height to width and then I copy that down on a paper?
Yeah, so you can, there's a couple ways to go about it. If you want to draw it the exact same as your viewfinder, tape it and then trace the inside of the window onto your page. If you want to scale up, then you're going to have to, figure out the ratio of the short side to the long side and then draw that rectangle on the page, whatever scaled up version you want of that.
So is that supposed to be exact? As in I take like a ruler out and then do some math and...
If you want to scale it up, yeah. It should be exact same dimension. There's a tool called a proportional divider. I didn't want to overwhelm everybody with too many supplies because I didn't want these to get too pricey. I was trying to keep it bare minimum, but a proportional divider can be really helpful if you're scaling up or scaling down. These little pegs let you change the ratio, and then the small side is always relative to the big side. So it will always scale up consistently. They're super helpful. That's another tool, another way to go learning proportion is to just use a proportional divider. I have one and I love it. Yeah, I have the tiny metal brass one. It weighs a ton, so I hardly ever use it just because it's pointy and it seems dangerous. But yeah, it's a good way to sort of, because my goal with these lessons is not to give you a practice exercise and that's the way you draw from. I don't expect you to have emotional space for every drawing you do in the future. I'm hoping that you'll gather the skill set to do this without going through all the steps of holding up the viewfinder, transferring the rectangle, marking the points. I want that to become something that you're doing intuitively instead of formulaically. And a proportional divider is a similar thing where just practice with it over time will give you that intuition. Those are some options for working on proportion. Yeah, well, let's do the notional space this time then, and we'll see how you do with it. So yeah, I would ideally one photo, one life drawing for this. I wanted to. I was hoping. I don't know if you're burnt out on drawing hands. I know you drew how many did you? 40 or something. It was crazy. There were so many hands in the video.
Oh yeah, I think it was
such good
50,
practice.
And then I did another bonus 10.
Yeah, it was crazy. So that's such good practice to just do that. I don't know if you'd be wanting to do more hands. If you are, I think it might be a good idea to do maybe a life drawing of hands with that better lighting and a special attention on the thickness of those cylinders if you wanted to give that a go.
As in the one from Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain where you just stare at your hand and draw with the other one?
Oh, no. I'm saying almost the exact same method you did before on your video when you're drawing hands. Just draw from life, draw your hand. But while you're drawing it, get that better light source that you've got it coming at an angle and you have those nice form shadows that actually make it easier to draw, hopefully, in the long run. And then just pay attention to the widths of the cylinders. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, the stair, put your hand behind you and you what is it? Like you look at the hand and not the notebook. Is that the
Yeah.
one you're talking about? Yeah. I think you're past the point where you'd need anything like that because I can tell that you're already at that point observing, past a point where that would be helpful. Did you do that exercise? That's one of the that I do for the book. When I did the book like I don't know how long ago, and that was one of the few that I like just I know she's like, oh, you'll feel like it's a waste of space. I just didn't do it. How did you like it though?
I don't know. I was like at that point in my life where I desperately wanted to learn how to draw.
Oh yeah.
So I really just like absorbed the whole book really
Just
quickly.
dove in and did it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really like still looking back at my little progress before and after pictures. I'm really happy with it. I feel
Yeah.
like that really gave me the confidence to even start learning how to draw past that. So I really love the book.
That's really good. Yeah, my dad got that book when it was like first or second edition, so I think that was like the 80s.
Wow.
And we always had it on our bookshelf. Like when I was growing up, it was just always there. I must have flipped through it I don't know how many times when I was a kid. So yeah, it's a really good book. It's one of those that you see pop up in people's bookshelves all the time because it was just such a huge hit. I think because it was so helpful. Oh yeah, a lot of the lessons that I'm pulling from are modifications of some of the stuff in Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain because they're just so helpful. There's another book that I really like called Bert Dodson's Keys to Drawing. I recommend that one constantly. That one's really good for kind of just letting go and trusting your eye.
Was that the one
Which
where like the second lesson was drawing a machine?
it was in the first chapter. Yeah.
I got there and
That's
then
why
I
I
was
did the
like
drill. Yeah.
I couldn't find a machine, so then it's like sitting on a bookshelf somewhere now gathering dust. Maybe I need to dust it off.
Yeah, I did a power drill because it was like the only thing I didn't want to pull out my machine, and that was like the one that he recommended. I was like, I'm not doing that out of the closet. But yeah, that one, that's a good book too. And then there's a lot of like online resources that I use too, like that notional space. This Leonardo, what is it called? Oh, the Da Vinci Initiative has some resources available. If you're ever looking for something, dig through their website. I was going to have you do the negative space drawing, but it sounds like you've already done that. Very similar to the one in Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, except I was going to switch it up to cutlery. So if you want to do that, that's on the table, but it sounds like you've already done that. So I don't think it's really necessary.
Like it's been so long since I've tried to draw in this way. I feel like I don't know, my drawings are sort of like deviating from reality in a way that I'm not really liking, not in a style way, just a like laziness way.
I don't even think it's laziness. I think you're maybe relying on basically construction. I I really like construction drawing, even though it's something I personally I think it's a really good way to go about drawing, but without a foundation of really, really solid observational skill set, I don't know how helpful, construction drawing on its own is. So I kind of want to tap back into that because observation drawing I think also gives you confidence. Because when you tackle something like I've never drawn a toy car before this, before I was practicing it for this notional space lesson, just to make sure it was feasible. It wasn't intimidating. I mean, there were challenges, parts that I had to flip it upside down to get angles right and stuff like that, but when you learn to trust your eye, there's a confidence there that is really helpful. Like for me, like when I paint, if I ever dig myself into a hole, I paint with gouache, which is not the most forgiving paint. You have a limited number of layers. It has a tendency to pull up under layers. It's finicky. It's not as bad as watercolor, but it's up there. um, and one of the things that I kind of learned early on when learning how to paint was before you dig yourself into a hole, like making mistakes that you can't fix, it's a really good idea to just sit there and look at your image until you understand it. Look at the shapes, the angles, values, the colors. Just look at what you have in front of you until you're confident that you understand it well enough to translate it to the page. And it almost takes like a lot of the guesswork out of drawing when when you get to something difficult, as long as you look hard enough and carefully, you can conquer anything. That's kind of what I believe when I draw is if I just trust my eyes hard enough and give them the time to really take in what I'm seeing, I can draw whatever I want. And I just want to pass that on to people because it's been incredibly helpful for me personally. So yeah, I think that you were saying you're deviating from reality a little bit. I think part of that might just be trusting your eyes a little bit more and taking your time to really take in the visual information in front of you. And there are really good tools for that, like turning your drawing upside down. If you get stuck, if there's a part you're like, I don't know where this shape should go, what angle it should be at, how big it should be, flipping your work upside down and drawing it, or putting it in a mirror and drawing it, is super helpful.
Yeah. I do find that that's like it really helps a lot, but while I'm doing it, I always feel like I'm cheating, and like I don't know that I
Yeah.
can't really draw if I do that, and then it gives me like stress.
So that's something I hear a lot, is people worrying that, like, oh, is using a reference cheating, or is, using a grid cheating. Those are, I mean, they're tools. All artists use tools. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of the artist Albrecht Dürer. He's
Yeah.
one of my favorites. He used to use this like a wire grid that he would put in front of whatever he was drawing, and then he would draw the same grid on his page, which is basically the grid method, and that's a Renaissance artist doing that. And Van Gogh would use this. I don't remember what it's called, but it was basically like a wooden picture frame with crosshairs, so horizontal, vertical, and diagonal crosshairs that all met in the middle, and he would use that to help him with his proportion and placement of things. So, and there's an old school device there's one called a camera obscura, and there's one, it's a type of projector that works on kind of the same the camera obscura. You put an object and it projects that object on a flat surface, and artists would trace those. That's been going on since the camera obscura was invented, which I don't even know how long ago that was. So I wouldn't, use what you have to your advantage. Draw. There's no reason to handicap yourself. Obviously, as far as tracing everything, claiming I drew this, but use the tools that make life easier. And the nice thing too is using those over time, you'll end up with an intuition that you don't need those tools anymore. I mean, there are artists I've seen who they'll draw a straight line down the middle of their canvas, and then they will, with thumbtacks, tack a string into their ceiling and hang a weight from it. They've got that straight line. And then they'll put what they're drawing in front or behind that straight line so that they have it and they can line it up on their drawing or their canvas. So, I mean, all artists use tools. Giving yourself, using a mirror. Who is it? I can't remember his name. He's a super famous comic book artist, but he constantly, like every couple minutes, he'll hold a mirror up to his drawing to make sure it looks right first. I mean, these are tools that professional artists use. I don't think they're cheating at all. And hopefully, you'll get that intuition where you won't even need them down the line.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I guess that's the dream, right?
Yeah.
Do it so much that you don't. I'm always so impressed by, I don't know, people who can just draw a thing from imagination without constructing anything on the page. It just flows from their pen tip. And I realize that that's because they've drawn so much from life and they've constructed so much that they've ascended past it.
Yeah, my best friend is that way. She'll pull out her sketchbook page after drawings that look like they were constructed, but they're not. And it's exactly that. If you look at her sketchbooks from middle school and high school, it's all construction drawing. It's all life drawing. It's just so much practice. She probably went through I don't even know, 5-10 sketchbooks a year. It's really a mileage thing.
Yeah, I guess it's just hard to remember.
It is, yeah. It's putting in the time always feels intimidating before you've done it. I did 3 months of painting every day. I actually only started learning how to paint in July. I've been drawing for that, but painting is something that is super, super new to me. It's been, 6 or 7 months since July. And doing that 3 months of painting every day, that is, I think, the only reason I still paint, because it forced me to keep up with the frustrating parts, and it got me over those, really tough beginner's hurdle where you're, mastering the medium and, kind of applying color, things like that, the really difficult parts. You just have to, push through.
Yeah, so do you do art full time, or is this aside from what you do as another job?
This is like a side thing for me at the moment. I hope to do it full time. That's actually part of the reason less is that, it's a little more consistent than trying to sell painting. Because, once you get somebody signed up for lessons, that money's coming in. Whereas selling painting, it could take a month, it could take a year to sell regular painting. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way to do it full time, because it's, yeah, better than a real job,
Yeah, I guess just how do you balance that? Because I always feel like I'm being pulled in between putting more time into my art and trying to improve my drawings, since I'm still not at the point where I can really, even hope to make this into any sort of actual career yet. I need to get my skill up to that level first. But I also
Yeah.
have my schoolwork and the career that I'm building there, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just I don't know, it's hard to figure out what's my top priority at any moment of my life.
Yeah, that's really the hard part. And I mean, it comes down to what kind of sacrifices are you willing to make? Like, it sounds intimidating to sacrifice 7 hours a week. It sounds a little less intimidating to sacrifice an hour a day to drawing, But I mean, you really do end up having to give stuff up. I mean, when I was doing a day, it was an hour a day. It was typically a minimum of 4 hours a day of painting. So, and on weekends I do 12 hours. I'm kind of strange though, because when I jump into something, I kind of really jump into it. Like when I learned to crochet, I crocheted, I think it was 30 Christmas presents, 30 days, around there. Like basically a crochet project a day.
Wow.
Generally small things, but I'm strange. Like I don't expect that kind of commitment from most people, because I enjoy it, and I think a lot of people get the feeling things like that are tedious after a little while, and I'm just an oddball, and I accept that. I can't expect everybody taking these drawing classes to do like a draw. But yeah, I think start small. Start with those 1 hour commitments. If you know have to stop watching a TV show, just cut back an hour on Netflix, or spend your lunch break drawing, or you know wake up an hour early, or cut out an hour of internet time, like whatever it is. Like, you do end up having to make sacrifices. It's just, so there's a subreddit that really helps. I just typed it into chat. It's called the X effect, and it's kind of like an accountability method. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. So it's an accountability method for keeping yourself dedicated and consistent with, I mean, it can be anything. There are people on there who do the X effect for brushing their teeth, but you can use it for drawing, painting, exercise, whatever. It's just a really handy method. Basically, you draw a grid, and each box in the grid represents a day, and you set aside how many days you want this habit up. They recommend, I think it's 7 weeks, which is 49 days. I've read that it's closer to 80 to 90 days to form a habit. So you might want to consider that. But yeah, once you've done, an hour of drawing every day for it doesn't even feel like a chore. It doesn't feel like something you're obligated to do. It's just so ingrained, it's habit. It's like, when you get home, you make a snack. You've done that, every day for, you know, years. It's a habit. You don't even think about it. You just do. The goal of this method for anything you want to keep accountable to yourself is you just have to stick with it long enough that it becomes a habit, and it's something you don't even think about. You just sit down and do it. So that might be an option for you. It doesn't seem like it seems like you draw a lot already. I mean, on your streams alone, you're spending what, like 3 hours drawing? times. That's good.
Yeah. This is something I've really been working on in my life because last semester I drew pretty much maybe 1 hour or 2 hours total throughout those 3 months. And I felt sad afterward because when I tried to draw again, I realized I've lost so many of the skills that I built up, and I felt like I really lost my momentum that I was
Hmm.
coming through with from the summer because I drew a lot over the summer. So ever
Yeah,
since winter break, so about halfway through December, I've been drawing pretty much every day, and
that's really good. Yeah. And so it sounds like you've already got that commitment down. And I know it gets hard. How much longer do you have in?
I have until the end of the year. I have until the end of December until I graduate.
Oh, okay. So you're almost done then.
Almost.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, I know how hard it is to keep up with you know, like hobbies or I basically did nothing hobby oriented while I was in school. I was just so busy. Um, so yeah, I know that feel. It I think it's you know, it's not quite like riding a bike where you can just get back on and immediately do it, but it doesn't take that long to get back in the swing of drawing, you know. And sometimes a break is good for your brain.
I just think about that one video I watched a long time ago where they were like, watching anime is good for your art skills. Because I didn't draw for like this amount of time. I don't remember. I watched this video so long ago, but he said, "Yeah, I haven't drawn in forever, but I've watched a ton of anime." And I went back to drawing, and all of a sudden I could do it. I could draw these like manga figures. I was like, "Yes, I just need to keep that in mind. I'm still observing things. I'm still
Yeah.
learning."
Yeah, if you're exercising that observation muscle, even when you know physically drawing, that definitely you know like if you're have downtime in class, just observe your backpack or water bottle or the back of the person's head in front of you or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, you get so many chances to observe, and obviously putting pencil to paper is going to reinforce those that like visual library building a little better than you know just observing. But when you don't have a pencil, you know, observing is second best. You know, it's great. Keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I did print out the little value scale you told me to
oh
do.
yeah, how did it print all right?
I think so. Although value 10 and value 9 sort of look the exact same, but everything else seems to be pretty delineated.
That's good. So the thing is, it doesn't have to match up exactly the professionally printed scale that you'd buy on Amazon, because you're using it as a reference to check back and between. Oh yeah, we were going to go over value work. I had that written down and it was on the back of my page. I am sorry. Yeah, if you've got, we can spend the last 10 minutes going over value. Yeah, so it doesn't matter if it's completely accurate to the one because you're using this as a comparison tool.
Uh-huh.
So you'll hold it up to your drawing and the little notches are super helpful. I recommend cutting those out because it helps you isolate spots, which is great. Yeah, just hold it up to the space on your reference that you're trying to match the value of. Make a note of what number it is, like just keep it in the back of your head, and then start doing your drawing. You know, transfer to your drawing and start filling in that value.
Gosh, but how do you
And then
know? I like this stuff confuses me so much. I have no idea how value or colors or anything works. I just like vaguely try to darken things.
yeah, so that's the nice thing about the tool is just put down that guesswork. You know, just darken it how you feel on the page, and then you can hold up that value and remember 7, and I've done it as a 5, so I know I need to darken it. And over time, you'll end up not needing the value tool, and you won't be thinking of value in numbers down the line. It'll just be, you know, is this darker or lighter? Another thing, so you've got 2 points of reference anytime you're drawing. You have your subject matter, your reference, your whatever's sitting in front of you if you're doing life drawing, and you also have what you've already drawn on the page. So if you've already drawn, you know, like the darkest dark, like let's say in this car, you've drawn the shadows under the wheels, which are just about the darkest dark in this, then you know that everything else that isn't that same darkest dark needs to be at least a hair lighter than that, you know?
Hmm.
So So I like to reference within my own and reference my reference. Value accuracy is the number one most important thing for realism. I did actually notice that you're really great at placing your shadows. You put them in the right places. They're generally just about the right shape. It's just where they fall on that value scale.
Mm-hmm.
That is the biggest thing that I think is holding you back from very realistic values.
Yeah, do you mean by practicing this with something that's actually in grayscale already, or trying to like translate it from like a colored subject?
Practicing with grayscale is going to be much easier, and I would recommend some practice with it in grayscale. You could, if you want to practice using the value tool on this car draw or this car photo while you're drawing it, pop it into black and white and give it a go that way.
Oh, like I don't know if I can draw.
Yeah. The other thing is when you're doing it with color, it is more difficult. It definitely is more difficult. If you're working digitally, you have the advantage of just, hitting a button, switching it into grayscale. If you're working real life, from life, you don't have that option. So there are a couple tricks. One of them is to kind of like half close your eyes. So everything's kind of blurry and the colors look a little less distinct. And that can help you pick out values. There's also, the color sensing parts of your eyes are in the center of your vision. And the dark and light sensors, the rods are in your peripheral, and you don't actually have any color vision in your peripheral. If you feel like you do, it's just your brain filling in the gaps, making a guess. So what you can do if you're really not sure about a value is use your peripheral vision to try and get, mask out that color and just get value. I find that the, half closing your eyes generally more helpful than the peripheral vision because it's harder to get shapes, right? Because it's not as focused. Yeah, I've got this newfangled Surface tablet and I still don't know where all my programs are. I was running on like a old Linux computer before this, so
Wow. That's an upgrade.
yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got a new Yoga 920.
Oh, cool. Is that a drawing tablet?
Yeah, it's like a 2-in-1 where you can like flip it up like into a tablet mode, and it has a digitizer and pen and stuff.
Oh yeah, so it's mine is kind of the same way then. Yeah, this is the first time I've been able to do digital art, which is why I was asking everybody to do traditional art because it's something I'm not really versed in enough to give people too much guidance. Although hopefully all the skills that we learn, with these traditional lessons help with anything digital.
Yeah, totally. So like you want me to do this in graphite, right?
Yeah, graphite. Or charcoal if you've got charcoal on hand. Graphite might be a bit easier. And you've got the drawing pencils with the different hardness, right?
Yes, I do have a set of drawing pencils.
Cool.
That's charcoal. Yeah, I just don't know. If I use my charcoal, I don't know where to blow my charcoal dust.
Oh. Yeah, I usually just the extra dust. I have one for charcoal and I have one for pencil because the charcoal will completely, immediately destroy a kneaded eraser. It just coats the whole thing.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'd do this one in graphite, and then I'd like you to do one more hand drawing from life with the angled light. And then if you want to do a negative space drawing too, that's totally up to you. I would recommend doing it with forks, spoons, knives, egg beaters, whatever's like kitchen junk in your drawer. And let me find an example real quick. If you want to do that one, that's totally up to you. Make sure though you've got some trap shapes. So like these, I don't know if you can really see. There are areas that are completely enclosed by white. And make sure you're drawing the negative shapes instead of drawing each, like thinking about it as drawing a frond of a plant, or I guess you'll be doing forks and stuff. So, draw the spaces in between instead. If you want to do that one, it's totally up to you. It seems like you did it before, so it's really up to you on that one. But yeah, the notional space one and then the hands, I think.
So did you want me to take like a picture of a hand with, I guess, my hand?
Yeah, and I would do it from life. I would draw it like you draw your left hand while right or drawing with your right, you know.
Okay, yeah.
Um, it's a little bit tricky. It can tape the page down to the table or desk or whatever you're working on. Or if you have a good heavy sketchbook, they usually don't move too much. I know that's a bit different than, I don't know if you've done much drawing from life. Minimum I'm kind of asking for is, I'll type it in chat for one hand from life, do the one car notional space. Yep, I think that's all we had. And then if you want optional, we've got the negative space drawing. What was the other one? Oh, life drawing using optional. So, yeah, that's hopefully what we'll do. And then, cool. I was going to ask you if there was anything specific you wanted to work on next. If there were any specific skills you want to target, I can try and work out a exercise to kind of go over that.
I don't know. I mean, like, right now I've just been, like, super into figures and stuff. I've been doing Figuary, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I've been
It's like
doing
the 30-day
Figuary every
challenge
day.
or 28-day challenge, I guess, in February. Yeah.
They have, the Croquis Cafe resources, which are, like, videos of models, which have
Yeah.
been really cool. So I've been doing that every day, and I don't know how much I'm improving, but that's something. Like, are you figure kind of person?
I do draw figures sometimes. Um I don't do a lot of the underdrawing that a lot of people do when they do figure drawing. Like I don't usually do gesture unless I have a specific dynamic after. I kind of take drawings as a whole. Um, so I do some figure stuff, but like personally when I draw. But yeah, we can do some figure drawing practice too if you want to incorporate that into Figuary. Maybe if you want to combine the value practice with the figure drawing practice. I don't know if that sounds interesting to you.
That sounds like fun. That's kind of what they're covering right now in the like Figuary instructional stuff.
Oh, cool.
So
Okay.
that would be interesting.
Yeah, I would be interested maybe for you to do. So I watched part of one of your streams, and it looked like you were getting the major then the position of the limbs, stuff like that. I don't know if you'd be interested in doing practice with that method, and then with like a very light pencil, and then go value using observation and you know what you have on the page. If combining those three kind of skill practices, the traditional figure drawing that you've been practicing, the value, and the observation.
Um,
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah,
this
so you are working with values a little bit.
like
Yeah.
this is what I really want to improve on, like being able to draw without like an underdrawing. Like this is just straight marker onto the paper with nothing else.
Oh, okay.
And that's
Yeah.
like what I really want to get to.
Yeah, I think that would be, I mean, that's something I can help you with more than like some of the gesture stuff you've got going.
Yeah, like stuff like
Okay.
this.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So there
just
was no underdrawing. I think that's the one I watched actually. Yeah, because you did the two versions of it. One with was it watercolor and Copic?
yeah. Yeah, watercolors and then Copics.
Yeah.
And then yeah, that's like yeah, like I don't know. I love the idea and I feel like it's I really want to improve my proportions just like and my confidence because I
Cool.
see people do it, so I'm sure it's possible.
Yeah, so let's take an observational approach to it and see if because that way there's no underdrawing when you do observational. So why don't we next week we'll do yeah, let's do some observational drawing of the figure and then we'll do some faces at different if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, that would be
And
cool.
I'd like to use some of the stuff. I didn't jump into it right away with this lesson because I wanted to address some of the proportion issues and then the negative space too, because negative spaces are so helpful for figures and faces. because people are so used to that we, even if it's unconscious, we have, like a preconceived symbol idea of what people look like. And so by drawing the negative spaces, you're to draw what you see instead of drawing those preconceived. So once we've done a little bit of negative space with this notional drawing, and if you want to do the other negative space one too, then yeah, I think we're ready to jump into faces at different angles and figures.
Yeah, that's it. That would be really cool.
Cool. Let me make a note real quick on your. Yeah, and I've also noticed you tend to widen the hips and narrow the shoulders a little bit too.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that because like I'll try to come back and draw the shoulder. I'm like, oh my god, I didn't leave any room for a shoulder bump.
Yeah, and observational drawing is another thing. I mean, I know I keep coming back to it. I'm an observational boy, but no, observational drawing. When in doubt, just look and see how wide that shoulder should be, and use comparison. How wide is the head compared to how wide that shoulder should be, and then it's like playing spot the difference. How is my drawing different than the reference? To get those widths and those angles all right. So.
And like none of my figures, like even the ones that I take a long time on, have any faces because I don't know what I'm doing, and then I feel like it gets worse the more I try to add a face to it.
Yeah. Well, and especially with all those, like construction drawing lines underneath them, it's hard to fit a face in clearly when you've got. When you've got that, those extra lines in there. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and these are the goal of this kind of figure drawing is not that this is how you start every figure that you draw. This is mostly to give you an eye for proportion that then when you're drawing, later on, that proportion is intuitive. You know how, the difference between the length from the thigh to the knee to the knee to the ankle is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You'll know how to figure all of those sizes and proportions out. And then I don't know if this is something you want to cover at some point, but is another thing that observation foreshortening.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that's something that you're interested in working on in these lessons.
Definitely. I'm very intimidated by it, so I've been avoiding it.
Yeah. And I think so foreshortening is something that I think everybody has a really hard from imagination construction. So I'll be focusing on it through observation, and we'll talk about some tricks for foreshortening when we go over that. So cool. Next time, I think we're going to do a little bit more value, and then the faces and figures, if that's good to you.
Yeah, that would be good.
Cool. Did you have any questions about the exercises?
No, I guess I will just rerun it down. Just so I have the car notional space exercise, where I guess I'll just like trace the rectangle from your picture.
Yep, that's what I did when I did it. Is I literally just back of my sketchbook page and traced that rectangle in. So.
Yeah, so then I'll look at it in grayscale. So I will first I will of course look at the proportions, try to draw it correctly, and then I will try to color it in, I guess,
with the value. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and make sure you're doing that negative space drawing for these, like the contour of it, and keeping those corners, like each triangle of the corner should be negative space drawn, and then there was something else. Oh yeah, mark these points where it meets the edge on your printout or and on your sketchbook, so you know where they all meet, and that should help with the proportion a little bit too. So, I guess I thought I was screen sharing. I guess you didn't really see my screen. I'm sorry, I'm bad at this computer thing.
Oh yeah, I remember the diagrams, right?
Yeah, yep. Mark the corners.
Yep. So is that something I just copy down to? I'm not supposed to eyeball it?
For now, copy it down. In the future, it's something that you should be able to eyeball. But for now, we'll just do the copying it down.
Got it. And then I will stare at my hand and draw it while it's being lit from a good angle.
Yep, exactly.
With pencils again.
Yep, and then make sure that you're paying attention to the width of those cylinders.
I guess I can draw on my, like, spoons and forks and can openers.
Yep. Do the negative space one for that, and then you can do a life drawing too.
This will be fun.
Yeah, I'm hoping it'll be good. And if you think of anything, if you have any questions, if anything, feel free to just message me on Discord, and you can keep posting your images on Discord too. So
Awesome.
That'll be a nice record of all of your photos over time.
Yeah, exciting.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
So that was the lesson. I hope you learned something new, some new concepts, some new exercise you can start trying. Feel free to try out the homework and stuff. I'd love to see it. That would be really cool, actually. I'll even show it to her. It'll be great. If you're interested in booking her, I'll leave her Instagram and some other details in the description. See you guys soon, hopefully on stream. Have a good day and get back to work.